I don't know what's going on.
Now it says live.
Yep.
We are live.
Okay. You want me to start?
Go ahead, brother.
Hey, this is the meeting of the Davids. Doc is one. He's a buddy that is leading our church in worship, and there. And the other Dave is a friend of his. It's been a friend for 2 or 3 years, 3 years, and been my friend for about 3 minutes. And that's about all I know.
Well, there we go. So to give a little background on me and the the other David, the professor as we call him, we started a Bible study a few years ago on Tuesday nights, and um, I don't know, it just seemed fitting as Tuesday night, so figured that we'd have a discussion on. We'll start from Daniel chapter 9, and um, and we'll go from there. So I figured, um, do you have a stopwatch,
Who,
Dan?
me?
Uh, Kaufman.
I have a watch.
Um, so time the each opening. Well, the whoever goes first, their opening statement,
Uh huh.
and the other person will go for however long that the first guy goes.
Gotcha.
Um, so David, Professor, why don't you start?
On Daniel chapter 9?
Yep, go ahead.
Well, in my studies, uh, maybe we should have read it.
He shall make a covenant with many.
Well, uh, Daniel chapter 9 starts off actually with two prophecies in it. One is for uh, uh, his people, which would be Israel, and the other one's for the holy city. And I kind of read the scripture a little different. I try to split up the two prophecies in the following verses. I got Margaret's Bible here. See if I can read it for you.
Yeah, Daniel chapter 9, right?
Yeah, I think I highlighted in my Bible. I'm not sure about how.
Takes me for your muscle.
I'll find it here in a minute. Here we go. I'm in Daniel. Let's see.
Yeah, and it's Daniel chapter 9. It starts off with verse 24. If you want to read it, because I'll probably read it as well.
Yeah, it says 70 weeks of years or 490 years have been decreed for your people and for your holy city, Jerusalem, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make atonement or reconciliation for the wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness or right standing with God, to seal up vision and prophecy and prophet, and to anoint the most holy place. So you are to know and understand that from the issuance of the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the coming of the Messiah, the anointed one, the prince, there will be 7 weeks of years and 62 weeks of years. And it will be built again, which is a city, plaza, and moat, and even in times of trouble. Then after 62 weeks of years, the anointed one will be cut off and denied
You work too hard.
his messianic kingdom and have nothing and no one to defend him. And then I would jump down and say, and he will enter into a binding and irrevocable covenant with many for 1 week, 7 years. But in the middle of the week, he will be stopped. He will stop the sacrifice and gain offering for the remaining 3.5 years. And then I would jump back over to 26 again. And then the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end will come with a flood, even to the end. There will be war, desolations are determined. And then we go back over to the last verse, and on the wing of abomination will come one who makes desolation or desolate, even until the complete destruction. One that is decreed is poured out on the one who causes the horror. So from the historian view, these scriptures have been fulfilled. Now, to the futurist view, they take a different twist to it.
Right. And that's why we're here.
Well, that's what you brought up. You wanted to talk about it.
Yep. So what? So go ahead. What is your position on that?
Well, the futurists use this scripture, and this is the only place they can get it. For 7 years, it's been cut off from the 490.
Yes.
But this whole scripture is taking up the 490 years. Right here, we're in 25. So you're to know and understand that from the issuance of the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the coming of the Messiah, the Anointed One, he's called the Prince here. This would be when Ezra goes back to help finish build the temple. Jerusalem has already been mostly built, the walls, and some of your scholars use the year 457 BC as a starting point. Now, if you go 490 years in the future from there, you end up about the time that Stephen is stoned and Paul is called on the Damascus Road. So the 7 years they're talking about, or the 7 years of Messiah's 3.5 ministry, and then the last 3.5 is the apostles bringing the gospel to the Jews only, not the Gentiles, just the Jews. And so I've heard people say that from the end of the Old Testament to the beginning of Matthew, God didn't speak to any prophets or and forward into Israel for like 400 years. Well, the book of Daniel covers them 490 years. God didn't have to send them any more prophets. And I view Revelation the same way. Once it was finished, Revelation began. So we're in the same process as the 490 years is in Daniel.
Right. Well, how much time was that, Dave?
That was about 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Yep.
All right. Well, I will. Just let me know when 7 minutes is up, and
Okay.
I mean, if I even take 7 minutes, I might not take the 7 minutes. Let's see here. So, as David knows that I had to bring. I like visuals, so this little chart right here kind of breaks down the 6,000 year worldview of human history. So you got the creation about 6,000 years ago. You got the flood 4,400 years ago. Then you got your Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses. But this little yellow stripe right here is greatly expanded at the top of this timeline to be the Great Tribulation period that starts. Your guess is as good as mine. But what we're waiting on is for the treaty. There is something in the air that people want to have world peace, and that's going to end up happening at some point. I mean, I would think pretty soon. If you watch the news, you can read and study it, and you can see where everything is lining up perfectly for this individual we're about to read about to come upon the scene. So, Daniel chapter 9 talks about the prince that shall come. So, Daniel chapter 9, starting in verse 24, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgressions and to make the end of sins and to make the reconciliation for iniquity and to bring the everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. So let's see. Verse 25. Now, therefore, and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem to Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. So far we're reading and we're seeing a picture, right? We're seeing that point and position that they're wanting something to be built in Jerusalem. But it goes on to say there's going to be times of trouble. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. So Jesus wasn't cut off or killed for himself. He died for us. So let's see. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with the flood, and unto the end of the war of desolations are determined. And he shall confirm a covenant with many. Well, now the question is, who's the he? Well, it's the prince that shall come. So now the professor says that this is Jesus, and I say this is quite opposite, the Antichrist. But he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of the abominations that he shall make desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So Antichrist makes a treaty right here, but in the middle of the week, 3.5 years, the Antichrist breaks the treaty, and then you got your great tribulation period that happens. And of course, rapture is not in the Bible, but the idea of it is you got the day of Christ, not to be confused with the day of the Lord. They're really different, especially whenever you get to studying, like in the King James Version. I mean, I'm not a King James only guy, but you know, that's a whole nother story. But the sun and the moon are darkened. That's your sign. Now, in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, they all state the Olivet Discourse, and the disciples go to Jesus privately and ask him, when are you coming and what are the signs? When are you coming and what are the signs? And so forth. And Jesus,
1 minute.
1 minute. And Jesus answers them. And at the very end of the chapter in I know in Matthew 24, immediately after the tribulation, the sun and the moon go dark, and you will see the sign of the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory. So my time is up. So Professor, go ahead.
What do you need to know?
This is where we start the discussion.
Okay, going back to Daniel.
Yes.
There's they mentioned in verse 26 also the Messiah being the prince.
Yes.
But then it talks about the other prince in the last part of that verse. This prince is Tiberius the emperor. He's the one who sent his Roman legions like a flood to destroy Jerusalem and the temple. This is the desolation which is determined. Yes. Now, when it comes to the binding agreement, the first part of verse 27 goes with the first part of verse 26. So if verse 26 is the Messiah, then the Messiah is the one that's making the covenant. You can find this covenant fulfilled in Hebrews chapter 8, which is repeating Jeremiah 31. So therefore, it is the Messiah that it's making the covenant, and not there's no this prince. Just like I said, it's Tiberius, and it's not an Antichrist.
Right, but I mean, I see what you're saying, but how does that fit in with all the other points that the passage is stating?
You talking about in the gospel?
Yes.
Well, I mentioned that when you talk about the sun, moon, and the stars, you can find that in the Old Testament. One point is for
Joel.
And Joseph in his dreams, talked about him becoming the patriarch.
Yes.
And he mentions, I think he mentions the sun, moons, and the stars. Well, your scholars, or some scholars, refer to that as a sign of a change of power. It's symbolic, and it's not a actual physical seeing of that happening. And I know in Luke you have the best explanation about the army or the flood destroying Jerusalem. And as far as the signs that Jesus was coming back, they were knowing if this was the end of the age. Well, what age would you think they'd be talking about except for the Jewish age?
Right.
So they're looking for the signs for the end of the Jewish age, and not to a point of a tribulation. Jesus in his he talked about his coming back, but he never talked about his 7 years. Paul and Peter, and in their writings, they never talked about 7 years. And the reason they didn't is because it had been fulfilled during the 7 years from Christ's beginning of his ministry until going forth of right before Pentecost, right in that area.
Right. Now, Mr. Kaufman, what are your ideas on this passage of scripture?
You guys are way. I mean, I have to study it and study it out, but I would tend to follow Doc as far as being the Antichrist.
So, so the idea of it is, and I'm sure we'll get into it. David also says that the prince that shall come is Jesus, right, Dave?
The one that makes the covenant is Jesus.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Like I said, Hebrews chapter 8 confirms this covenant.
Right. Okay. And also,
so you're saying the word that it says prince, you're saying that is Jesus. The word, does it call prince? Because my Bible's on my phone. I can't get to it, but.
Well, I'm in the Amplified. It uses the word prince. The first time it uses it, talks about wrong page. I'm looking at chapter 11. Let's go back over here. Okay. Yeah, in verse 25, the first part of it talks about, and so you know and understand that from the issuance of the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the coming of the prince, which would be the Messiah, will be 7 years, 7 weeks of years, and then 62 weeks of years.
Right.
And then in the next verse, in the lower part, and the people of the other prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end will come with a flood, even to the end there will be war, and desolations are determined. Now, this last part is Daniel is describing or prophesying the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, because at the beginning up here it says that these 490 years have been decreed for your people and for your holy city. So the decree for the people is the Messiah, and the decree for the holy city is the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Jesus mentions the abomination of desolation that's mentioned. He says in Daniel. All Jesus is doing is repeating this last part of 26. That's all Jesus is doing. He's just reiterating a prophecy that has already happened.
Right. Yep. I see that. But I guess the fact that the point that I'm trying to make here is, in the second part of 27, he shall confirm that he is going to cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And let's see. And he will be the one that does that's the abomination of desolation.
And that's what the Roman region. That's what the Roman legions did. When they just went into the temple and destroyed it, that was an abomination. The Jews despised their standards because they were, I guess you'd say, like idols to these Romans. Because like we said, we studied before, David, that the temple, let's see, it's been destroyed twice. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed it, and the Roman legions destroyed it. But its abomination has happened 3 times. And the first time was Nebuchadnezzar when he destroyed it. The second time is when Antiochus started sacrificing pigs in the temple. And then the third abomination is when the Roman legions went in the temple and destroyed it. So it's been destroyed twice and abominized 3 times already.
Right. But I think this is more. I think this is going to be a bigger event. Like, I mean, we've already proved that we can have chaos because of COVID, right? We've already proved that with Hitler and all. We proved that we can have chaos. And
yeah, but you've been having that all for the last 2,000 years. You got your bubonic plague. You got your Spanish Inquisitions. Right. I mean, it's been going on. I mean, I'd rather had COVID than gone through the Spanish Inquisition.
Right. But however, what I'm getting at, this is going to be the big one. This is going to be one person is going to finally come up and solve the world problems. And I mean,
so I told you who that one person was.
Who is it?
It's the Catholic Church.
Well, that is also true, but we're going to see world peace. Gas prices now over $3 here in Kansas, and but we're going to see gas prices go down to, I don't know, 50 cents or something, and that is going to be, I guess, the calm before the storm.
If that happens, if gas prices go down 50 cents a gallon, then your salary is going to drop. Your income, you're going back to the 1960s and 50s when that happens.
Well, not necessarily. Well, yeah, but not necessarily. I mean, let's suppose that everything starts, well, at least gas, because Revelation 6 tells us that a measure of wheat will be for a penny. So, and the penny would be a day's wages. So, but let's just suppose that gas prices are cheap, or everything's cheap for a very short time, and then you can't buy or sell anything without the mark.
I told you where the mark came from.
Now go in on that, because I've been studying that as well, and it's actually crazy. I think it's here. I think it's in China now being enforced. But go ahead, David.
About what?
The mark of the beast.
I thought we was doing Daniel.
Well, yeah, but this goes. This covers the entire tribulation period.
Well,
Daniel
no, your tribulation period is your last 7 bowls. That's your tribulation period. It doesn't cover your seals and your trumpets. And the tribulation period of the seven bowls says it would be, I think, for a season. Or is that when Satan would be loose for a season?
Satan would be loose for a season, yeah.
Anyway, it's going to be a short period of time. It's not going to be no 7 years.
Right.
But when it talks about the mark of the beast, it talks about where it's placed. And let's see if I can find this long word. Deuteronomy. Here we go. Of course, it says that the mark of the beast will be placed either on the. We're talking about being placed on the hand and the forehead.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm in Numbers. Well, what Satan is doing is copying God. Because a lot of people won't go back and see what God said about having a mark on their forehead, the believers having a mark on their forehead and on their wrist. It says, now this is the command, the statutes and the judgments which the Lord your God has commanded me to teach you, so that you might do that which you are, that you're to obey in the land that which you are crossing over to possess, so that you and your son and your grandson may fear and worship the Lord your God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I am commanding you all the days of your life, so that your days may be prolonged. Therefore, listen, O Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well with you, and that you may increase greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. These words which I have commanded you today shall be written on your heart and mind. You shall teach them diligently to your children, impressing God's precepts on their minds and penetrating their hearts with his truth, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk in the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand or forearm, and they shall be used as bands or frontlets on your forehead. And you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. So Satan ain't the first one to come up with putting a mark on your hand or your forehead.
Right. Sounds like it was God's idea, but
That was God's idea. So Satan is copying God. And
right.
what the mark entails is what God gave here, is that to obey his command and statutes. So the mark of the beast will be for you to obey the commands and statutes of the Antichrist, you should say.
Right. But also, right. But also, I mean, Satan wants to always copy God, but do you think that could also be that he would maybe use like the little microchip that
No.
no?
No.
Because
What you got to look at is, and if the Catholic Church is the Antichrist, they have the Jesuit priesthood, which is like a FBI. Now, if they can infiltrate governments and get these governments to make laws and statutes to where you lose your freedom, then they're doing their job and you don't know it.
right.
My battery's fading, fellas. My battery's fading.
Oh no.
Well, yeah, I don't have a
Well,
plug-in near me.
Well, in that case, how long have we been on? Does anybody know?
40
38
minutes.
minutes.
38.
Yeah,
Yep.
about 40 minutes.
About 40 minutes. Well, considering that, let's call that quits and for tonight, and we'll get back to it maybe sometime in the next couple of weeks. So does that sound good to everybody?
Sounds good to me. I'll have a full phone.
Full phone, yep. All right, well, David.
Yeah, Doc.
Yeah, Doc. Nice meeting you, David.
Yeah, you too. Y'all stay warm up there.
It's snowing right now. It's cold.
Oh no.
I lived in Illinois
Yep.
3 years. I know what that's like.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also, me and David Kaufman will be studying. Next time, we'll probably go in more on Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, and Revelation chapter 6 as well. So,
Yeah.
I could keep you busy on that.
I know it. So, so if y'all are good with that, I'm good, and we will end it there, fellas.
All right.
All right, sound good to y'all?
Yep. See
All
ya.
right, go charge your phone, Dave.
Yes.
All right, we'll see ya.